And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
You know, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Don Gosher.
How well did that go down?
Talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if you want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMarketing.com.
I always feel when we start these things that when the call happens that we should kind of say something like, knock, knock, Neo, or something else quite mysterious.
Just get a bit of voodoo at the start, you reckon?
Yeah.
Maybe next week. Well, we should open with a joke, maybe.
No, mate, I've heard your jokes.
Oh, ouch. They're either really, really bad. Okay, I'm not quite sure whether you mean they're either really, really bad or R-rated.
Let me put it this way. Maybe we should either sneak them in the middle or put them at the end.
It'll turn people off. Fair enough.
Welcome, one and all, to this week's PreneurCast with me, Don Goucher.
And me, Pete Williams.
Glad you remembered who you were today, mate.
Yes, you know, it's been a big day of training today, so it's, impressive that I was able to recall everything.
Yeah, I do sometimes forget. It's right at the start of my day and right at the end of yours, and your days are pretty full.
Well, at the moment, it's the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks are pretty much the heaviest workload when it comes to the Ironman training. I had and it's for some reason it's meant to be springtime here, but it's basically had the biggest rainfall in Melbourne in 50 years yesterday or something like that, some weird stat. So it's a bit cold and a bit wet at the moment. Had a 3-kilometre swim this morning in the outdoor pool, so that was kind of interesting when you take a breath and you get a mouthful of water from the rain, and that was interesting. Then followed that with a 90-minute run in the rain on Beach Road. So big session this morning, but all going really well. So still fit, still healthy, which is the thing that's surprising me the most. Actually, is out of this whole campaign, my body is the fittest I've ever been, ridiculously fit, but also no real major niggles or injuries yet, knock on wood. So that's been very, very cool. The amount of work and effort I'm putting my body through on a daily basis, it's actually holding up pretty well. So it's been great so far. Yeah,
I am again shamed by your very existence. I struggle to get out of bed in the morning, It's like,
this has been a 10-year goal in the making. It hasn't been something I got out of bed one day and said I'm going to do an Ironman. It literally has been 10 years of planning, and not just planning in terms of training-wise, because I haven't been doing 10 years worth of training for this event at all, far, far from it. But it's been 10 years of planning. This is going to be a goal for the last 6 months of my 20s will be focused solely on doing an Ironman. So business, relationships, friendships have well known about this for many, many years. So it's, like they say, there's no such thing as an overnight success in business or in anything. This Ironman's not going to just be a 6-month campaign. It's definitely been quite a few years of putting things in place to be able to get me in a position to be able to do the training and do the work.
Good on you for saying that, actually, mate. I think that's it doesn't surprise me, and I know you, and I know this is the way that your brain works, and a 10-year plan isn't remotely surprising for you. But good on you for kind of just admitting that, it's not an overnight thing. You didn't just wake up one morning having been a couch potato for most of your life and gone, well, you know what, I think I'll do an Ironman. And then you're super, super blingy Mr. Training Man overnight and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's good to know that it's achievable by at least, above average humans anyway.
I think I was actually having this conversation with my cousin last night, who's a reasonably accomplished athlete. He plays footy, Australian rules footy, and he's just a little bit younger than me, so he's still playing into his late 20s and will probably go around a couple more seasons. So, and footy's a pretty tough sport in terms of physically getting abused and hit every weekend and stuff like that. And we were sort of having a conversation about it, and he's like, well, what does it take to do an Ironman? And realistically, it's just a 24 week solid commitment of training, and you got to have a bit of a base. Like I raced triathlons, relatively seriously when I was, my early 20s at uni and a little bit in high school. So I've got a swimming background and a running background because I did that all the way through high school, and then obviously the bike sort of stuff when I was just focused on triathlons. But realistically, I'm doing 20-week campaign for the Ironman in terms of training, and I have been running and did the Melbourne Marathon last year. Been running for years and always have done. So I've got a fairly solid fitness base to come off. But from a cycling and swimming perspective, I literally between when I stopped racing triathlons back in 2002 through, maybe let's say 2003 through to 15 weeks ago, whatever it might be, I probably swam a dozen times max. And in terms of cycling, I probably cycled 4 times. Literally, I didn't have much of a cycling base when I got into the Ironman stuff, and bought a new bike, and hence doing some serious Ks and time in the mountains and stuff like that. But I think having a solid fitness base is a great start. But I think if you just make the commitment and do the training and listen to your body and don't blow yourself up too soon, it's achievable for anyone with a decent fitness base and the ability to make the commitment. And I think the ability is the key word in all. Anyway, that was not the topic of the podcast. It's just a side rant, as we always sort of do at the start of every episode.
If I was a listener, I'd suspect deeply that sometimes we just didn't know what we were going to talk about, so we winged it for a while until we worked something out. I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm just saying.
We have plans before the call starts.
Yeah, I know we do, but sometimes we do go a little bit, off to one side.
Makes it whimsical and enjoyable for the listener.
Whimsical and enjoyable, yeah.
Speaking of listeners, I actually was loving the feedback we've had from last week's episode.
Yeah, do you know what? I was going in that direction as well. That was pretty cool, last week's stuff. Yeah,
they had some very cool emails, some very good tweets, and stuff like from people saying they really enjoyed last week's episode. Now, if you haven't checked it out, let's not spoil it for everybody, but we made a big promise in the podcast that if you listened to the podcast all the way through and played along with us, you would have the most productive podcast you would ever listen to. And I think from the response we've had is we fulfilled that promise, which is really, really cool. So, and I really hope people actually get that podcast out every now and again and just re-listen to it. For what it's worth and what it's meant to do, because I really do think it's one of those things. If you continue to devour that particular episode on a regular basis, you'll actually get some good results.
Yeah, and oddly enough, speaking of re-listening to stuff, before we get on to the main topic, I've had a lot of feedback this week from some kind of personal friends that listen to the podcast and just in general, people re-listening to the 7 Levers podcast.
Awesome.
And in fact, a little team I'm part of, we pulled that out. One of the other team members pulled that out, and we said, let's use the 7 Levers as a model for assessing the status of this business and where we're going to go forward with it. And I just thought that was great, really, really handy. It's like a little blueprint. You just go get the numbers, and then start looking for which lever to pull.
Fantastic. Well, that's the whole idea of it. I'm really glad that there's people using that, and obviously I'm glad you're using it, of course, as the co-host. But for other listeners and stuff, it means a lot when people are sort of saying, "I'm actually applying this stuff and it's actually helping," which is very, very cool, because that's what this is all about. Is just sort of giving advice from our sort of trench warfare, and hopefully it's helping other people fight their battles.
Yep. So what you got for me this week then, Pete?
A whole bunch of questions.
You've got questions for me.
I've got questions for everybody. So this is not going to be a typical sort of question podcast episode where we're going to sit here and answer listeners' questions. I'm going to actually probe and push and prod our listeners with a whole bunch of questions, because I was sort of, I don't know where this came up in my mind, but I've been thinking about it a lot the last couple of days. It might have been a conversation I had with someone. I'm not quite sure where the root of this episode came from, but basically, the power, I think it's almost a Tony Robbins type quote, the power of our life or the power of our answers is determined by the power of our questions, or something like that. I don't know the exact quote, so I might be able to find it and tweet it to us. At Preneur, if you want to sort of tweet that or anything else to us. But I really think asking good questions regularly and really self-assessing is quite important. So I actually... While I was at the masseuse tonight, this is how prepared I was. I actually took time while I was on the masseuse's table tonight getting a rub down. I've got to reword how I say that every week.
Yeah, you really need to be careful with that one, dude.
Yeah. While I was
having a sports massage, perhaps.
Yes. I was actually wrote down, I think, that the top 9 questions that I regularly ask myself. Not in any particular order, not in any particular sequence. These are just the top 9 questions I think that people should really be put on a note on their wall, on a post-it note, maybe the screensaver of their computer, whatever it might be. And if someone's a graphic designer out there, feel free to design something as a nice little checklist or reference sheet, and we'll mention it in next week's episode. And if you're a designer, we'll give your business a plug and all that sort of stuff. So let's go through these 9 questions. I think it's worth just touching on each of the questions and give some context around the question and how it fits. Does that sound like a fair probing podcast edition?
Yeah, I actually do like things like this. The kind of checking yourself. I was watching an interview with one of the Atlassian founders. I don't know if you know the Atlassian company down there.
I have absolutely no idea.
It's a big software company, so probably no, you wouldn't know. But they're actually mentioned in Daniel Pink's book Drive. Their novel way of managing their team and their people, etc., etc. But I was watching an interview with Scott Farquhar of one of the founders. Did
you just swear then?
No, I didn't. If I'm writing that down, I'm going to be very careful when I write it down. But yeah, and he was talking about how they have exactly this, a list of questions that they ask themselves on a regular basis to see how they're getting on. At the time, I thought that was a good idea, and I kind of made a little scribble to talk to you about it. But I'm intrigued to get your top 9 questions.
All right, so let's delve into number 1. And most importantly, this is not a sequential order of lists, and it's not ranked by importance. It's just 9 questions that you should be asking yourself in various ways, in various circumstances, at various times. Pardon me. So the first one is, how many offers did you make today? How many offers did you make today? Because realistically, when you think about it, the revenue your business generates is an exact multiplier of the amount of offers you made today. Now, this is something that really got solidified in my mind from Ed Dale, who talks about this in the context of Dr. Hewitt Gleason, who's also a Melbourne guy, the co-founder of some school with Edward de Bono, I think it is. Maybe. Anyway, he's written a great book called New Sell, and it talks about basically you want to make lots of offers. That's the fundamental principle of the book. Just like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is your house is not an asset or whatever it might be. The core principle of Dr. Hewitt Gleason's whole philosophy is you want to make a lot of offers regularly. It's called check move theory.
He's the guy who did the Wombat book, isn't he?
He is the guy who did the Wombat book, yeah. It's mentioned in that as well. Great read.
It's funny because as we started talking about this, the other thing that popped into my head was the Wombat book.
Yep. Well, we'll put a link to Dr. Hewitt Gleason's website, because on his website he's got a lot. I think he's actually got the Wombat book in PDF format you can download for free.
He does indeed.
Really, really cool.
So we'll definitely link to that. But yeah, so the New Sell idea of making offers.
It's just check move theory, and it's basically that you want to make a lot of... In chess, the way you win is by going check, 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 and finally you get checkmate and you win. So it's all about making a lot of offers. And that, if you really think about it as a starting up business or an entrepreneur who's trying to be an internet marketer or any sort of real world business trying to make it, you want to make as many offers as possible. You want to have so many options out there for people to say yes to. So whether it might be you want to speak to as many prospective leads as you can, you want to be making a lot of cold calls if you have to, or you might simply want to be just, if you're in an online space, have a lot of products out there, have a lot of sales letters up there. Because, realistically, I speak to a lot of startup online entrepreneurs and they're like, I'm not making any money. I'm like, okay, well, show me all your sales letters. Show me all the pages online that people have the opportunity to say yes to and purchase your stuff. Oh, and then when you dig into it, they don't actually have an offer anywhere. So how can people buy your stuff if you're not making offers? And an offer can be an e-commerce store. It can be a sales letter. It can be an autoresponder sequence. It can be something in your real-world business, maybe a newsletter that you send out to your past clients to actually offer them something new. It may be an upsell in the checkout process. It's the would you like fries with this? How many offers are you really making in your business today? And sit down and take some time to actually assess how many offers did I physically make today and how many are out there on autopilot with leverage.
Nice one. I like that you picked up on autoresponders there as well. We'll come back to that. This is like another entire episode again, as we keep saying.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, as you say, you can have these things that most people perceive as being static and just sitting there. but an autoresponder is just that way of the Hewitt Gleason point, the check move, that idea of the more times you touch base with your clients. He really emphasises a check move being a touching base with your client, communicating with your client, somehow, just making sure that the more that you do enough of those, because the more you do, the more likely you are to get a sale. And an autoresponder is a fantastic way of doing that.
Absolutely. Because all on autopilot. And we'll do an episode on autopilot marketing at some point. That could be kind of a cool episode. We could talk about different ways you can leverage and put stuff on autopilot. So question 2 is a fun question. It's, when was the last time you did something for the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time?
You have that on your email signature.
I do. I don't at the moment. I used to. I've taken it off at the moment.
You used to, yeah.
It's a powerful question. And it's not a marketing question. It's not a business question. It's not a profit question. It's just a enjoying life question. And that could be as simple as going to the ballet, doing an Ironman, buying your partner some flowers. I don't know. It's just about, life can be so redundantly boring if you just do the same crap every day. And that's something that just does my head in. I like to sort of, challenge the status quo and just to sort of keep energetic and do something different. And also it's a great way to bring up new ideas by doing something and actually experiencing something for the first time. When you're young and you're in high school and stuff, you're more willing to explore and all that sort of stuff. And the older you get, the more routine you get and the more mundane life gets. So I think it's really important to ask yourself that question seriously. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Because if you sit down with most people and say, look, let me look at your calendar for last week, and you grab the calendar for the month before and the year before, the weeks will be almost identical. Got up, went to work, came home, took the kids to netball, got up, went to work, went to the pub, had drinks with a mate, got up, went to work, picked the kids up from ballet, whatever it might be. It's very repetitive. So you've got to make time to do something new to actually make life exciting. So I think that's an important thing. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Third question. What mechanical work did you do today? Now, mechanical work is something that I talk about a bit when I talk about outsourcing and leverage. And what I mean by mechanical work is stuff where it's just the mechanics of the actual task. And there's nothing unique, there's nothing bespoke to you, there's nothing intellectual property that only you can do about that particular task. It's something that's mechanical. It's just rinse and repeat. And the reason I ask that is, what mechanical work did you do today? Is because that's the stuff, that's your leverage points. That's your lever points that you actually then go and look at ways to actually outsource that, whether it be outsourcing it through staff, either locally or overseas through, the Philippines or India or wherever it might be, but also leveraging it and outsourcing that using systems and softwares and tools, because anything that's mechanical should be easily replicable and leverageable. So handball it or write some software or a tool or buy some sort of program to do that for you, because generally, in most circumstances, as the business owner or the entrepreneur, there is no benefit in you doing mechanical work. You may as well get an employee to do that or a system to do that. Your main focus should be on traffic generation and conversion. It shouldn't be on delivering the product, and most mechanical work is delivering the product. And some factors and features and elements of conversion and of traffic generation is also mechanical work as well. So that's a really important thing, is continue to reassess what are you doing on a daily or weekly basis. Sit down, analyse that diary, and pull out the elements that are mechanical that you can then leverage and get off your plate.
Absolutely. On this one, I'm red hot on this at the moment. Having gone through, some outsourcing stuff that I got from you, and a lot of a few people are talking about outsourcing, but between the leverage stuff that you and I talk about offline and also the outsourcing material that I've got from you in the past, I'm absolutely red hot on looking for anything that, when I do it, if I do it more than once, can I write it down what I did? Can I document it? Can I describe it? Can I systematize it? And if the answer to any of those things is yes, right, it's going out, it's getting outsourced because it's mechanical work.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Number 4 and 5. Let me ask, I'll mention number 4 and 5 together. Number 4 is, what did you do today that you didn't need to do? And what didn't you do today that you should have done? Now, the first part of that is what did you do today that you didn't need to do? That's, again, about just leverage your time. What did you actually do today that you didn't need to do? Whether that be you did it because you were trying to act busy but really you were just procrastinating. Whether it was something you actually did that you didn't need to do because it wasn't really due yet, but you decided to do it because it was, urgent, not important, or whatever the whole argument is around that. Or maybe you did it today, but it could have waited 3 days. So it's really important to make sure what you're doing is the most critical and efficient thing you can do every day. So one of those things is, I think we've spoken about. Have we spoken about on the podcast the 5 questions that I ask my team to email me every day? No, we haven't yet, have we? No. Okay.
Not specifically. I know them, which is why I'm having a difficulty to remember if we talked about them.
Let's leave that for another episode. We'll call it a teaser in the industry. But basically what we want to try and do is make sure that people are working on the most focused and the highest priority things every day. So even for yourself, say, like, what did I do today that I didn't really need to do today? And then why did I do those? Was I just trying to act busier, but I was procrastinating? I didn't want to do the hard task because I was scared to do it for whatever reason. Or was it something I did that I personally didn't need to do and I could have actually palmed that off and delegated that? Or, what did you do today that you didn't need to do? Really important question. And also this could be, what didn't you do this week? Or what did you do this week you didn't have to do? Any time frame is relevant, obviously. So the second part is, what didn't I do today that I should have done? What was actually on my to-do list today that I didn't do? And why didn't I do it? Was I scared to do that? There's things that come up and, you have to do. It's like, I don't want to make that phone call. I don't want to have to actually have that conversation. Or every time I actually start and write, I don't enjoy the writing process, so I always avoid writing, but I know I should. Really just reassess, what did you do in this particular period of time this week? What didn't I do this week that I should have done? So that's a really important thing, is just to really clarify. And some of these questions are hard to answer. It's scary to sit down and really self-assess and look yourself in the mirror, but it's important to sort of really build your strength, because lifting weights is not fun. Running on Beach Road in the wind and the rain for an hour and a half is not fun, but that's going to get me to the goal I want, which is an Ironman, and this is the same sort of thing as well. So what did you do today that you didn't need to do, and what didn't you do today that you should have done? That's 4 and 5. Number 6. Nice, quick, easy one. Did you drink 2 litres of water and have 2 pieces of fruit? Let's get health conscious. I think it's important. Any sort of, there's a whole delve of conversation around, what denotes health and well-being and vitality and stuff like that. And, Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Body, is worth a read. And I know Timbo and Lukey over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, their awesome podcast, recently did an episode on health and well-being, and interviewed someone on their podcast about this exact topic, and I encourage people to delve deep into that. But you got to make sure you have a bit of fruit and some veg every day, and a couple of litres of water, just to remind yourself, did I actually do that, and am I looking after my body? Because looking after your mind's one thing, looking after your bank balance is another thing. But what's a really bad analogy that everyone talks about is, if you had a racehorse, or you had invested $50,000 in a racehorse, you wouldn't feed that crap every day. So why do you do it to yourself? That's sort of, it's such a truism, but because it is a true thing, is what, you wouldn't do that to a horse that's going to provide you an income from racing and winning. Why do that to yourself, who's actually providing you an income from working and that sort of stuff? So it's really important.
Mm-hmm. I actually have one of my clients is in the health and fitness space, and one of the great tips I got from him for making sure that you drink enough water is to actually have a 2-litre bottle or 1.5-litre bottle of water on your desk when you're working, because it's in front of you and you can see the water going down or not going down. And the moment I started doing that, obviously it's more obvious for me out here. I shan't talk about the weather, but it's quite warm. It's more important for me during the summer months, certainly, it's more obvious that I need to drink water. But having that bottle on my desk, a clear bottle that I can see whether I've drunk it or not, like, I've got it in front of me now, and I'm actually feeling slightly guilty because there's not very much missing out of it, and it's the middle of the morning. But it's there. It's a visible reminder that you need to do it, and it's also a marker to show you how much you've done.
Well, it's important. Yeah. Well, because what? Sorry, we're talking over
no, I was just
each other.
I was just going to say that is just a great tip. It's really obvious, and also for me, being like surrounded by more technology than really a sane person should have on one desk. Having it as a bottle with a top on it means it's perfectly safe for me knocking it over and ruining things as well.
Absolutely. And what I took away from what you were saying there is something very important. Out of sight, out of mind.
Oh, yeah.
That's important with everything. That's why I was saying, these 9 questions should be printed and put on your desk somewhere. It's why you're having that water bottle handy. It's why you want to have these checklists and things, so it's not out of sight, out of mind, because it's so true. What you focus on expands, and what you don't focus on, you forget. It's as simple as that. So number 7. Number 7 is, how can you profit from your waste? This is a really cool question that I got taught by Jay Abraham, and it's all about getting the most out of what you've got. And he's got plenty of tales and stories and case studies of clients of his who have worked out ways to profit from their waste, whether it might be a sawmill who actually was their main focus in their business was actually just cutting down trees and turning into 2x4 planks of timber, and they were just had all this sawdust left over, so they turned around and sold that sawdust off. Whether you might be a hairdresser and you can actually take your offset haircuts and sell them to make wigs for dolls. Rather than throwing that cut hair that's on the ground out, can you work out a way to package that up and sell it off? Whether it's even just for profit or for fun or for just goodwill. I know Baker's Delight, a chain of bakeries here in Australia, my understanding is that what they do at the end of every day is that any bread that's not sold, they can't resell it for health regulations, obviously, but they actually give it away. So a charity comes to the bakery every night at 6 o'clock and they actually give that bread away for free as a donation to a local charity they can then use for a soup kitchen or something like that. And I'm sure they've worked out they can also then write that bread off and as a tax deduction that they're giving away because they didn't sell it rather than just throwing it out. But there's so many other ways you can look at how you can actually profit from your waste. Let's take the whole selling the MCG side of things. Obviously, there was the waste of the actual MCG when they knocked the stadium down. If they were smart enough early on, they could have created their own series of memorabilia before I came along and did all that and gave them the idea. That's a way of profiting from waste. And the MCG could have done that themselves early on. They a whole other story. They ended up doing a bit of an auction for some of the remaining stuff after I kind of scooped in and gave them the idea and stuff like that. And they did very, very well with that for themselves. But there's so many ways you can actually profit from your waste if you think about what is left over that I could then turn around and possibly sell. And you can take that to the point of actually selling your systems. I know Jay Abraham talks about this quite a bit as well, where he's advised clients to say, well, if there's no wastage in your business because you're a service business, can you actually take what you do, package it up as a system, and sell the system to people in a non-compete area? Can you teach people how to do what you do so well in their business in other areas? So there's sort of ways to profit from your waste.
Yeah, two things that I got up from that definitely is how can you or someone else profit from your waste? And profit is meant in that open word, in that open term, as you say. There was the example of the charity benefiting from somebody else's waste, and it's not the classical definition of the word profit, but there is a benefit. You've instead of throwing something away, if somebody get some benefit from what you were going to throw away or that is extra to your requirements, then it's good for you. You feel better. You contributed somehow. So yeah, I think it is one of those things people don't think about. And again, the point about the systems that you develop, it's something that I certainly have been thinking about as my business grows and the kind of clients and the scale of client that I take on changes. I'm looking around and thinking there are people that maybe I wouldn't now take on as a client, but they still need this kind of service, and maybe I could create an info product about what I do so that I can still help those people and maybe make a small amount of profit from them, but without me actually having to do that work myself.
Well, exactly. And the leverage in that is you could actually, find a client who wants to work with you and say, look, I'll do it at a heavy discount to start with, or someone who's got a tight budget. You say, look, I will give you my time and I'll do the work for you at your discounted rate, but you have to allow me to record myself doing your work, then becomes the product. So you're getting paid up front to do the product or to do the actual thing you do while recording it, and that recording becomes the secondary back-end alternative product. So you're getting two birds, one stone. That's fundamentally what this question is all about. How can you profit from your waste? How can you get more out of what you're already doing without having to do anything extra? Maybe another idea is you're already sending invoices to clients. Does your invoice need to be a full sheet of paper? Can it be 2/3 of a sheet, and at the bottom of the invoice have another offer, have an upsell, have a cross-sell on your invoice? It's just wasted space. There's waste right there. It's not wasted sawdust on the ground of the mill, but there's wasted space on your invoice. Can you maximise profit from that waste with an upsell offer?
American Express have been doing that for a very long time.
Yep, absolutely.
But just to do that little sound effect insert thing that we talked about, that I'm still not going to do a real sound effect, but ninja tip. That whole thing, although you are giving away big secret there, as a secret in inverted commas, but the idea that you offer your services to somebody for a discount, record the process that you follow, and then that becomes your information product there straight out. There's your example given without you having to sit down and work out a good example. Your clients can come along and giving you an example. You just do the work as normal, just talk out loud while you're doing it, kind of thing, or make a note of what you do as you do it. Screenshots, screencasting, screen recording, audio recording, whatever it is, and away you go. There you go, folks. You can stop now, stop listening, go away, do that, make some money, off you go.
And it also depends on what business you're into, and it doesn't apply to everything, but it also comes down for horses for courses.
Yeah. But that's an amazing load of value out of that one question.
Well, mate, there's two more to go. We've still got two more questions to go. So, question 8. Let's dive into question 8. And I think this is one of the more powerful ones of the 9 as well. And it's really important to ask this almost on an hourly basis. What's the primary focus of blank? So, what's the primary focus of this action I'm about to do? What's the primary focus of this web page I'm about to build? What's the primary focus of this direct mail campaign we're about to build? What's the primary focus of this phone call I'm about to make? And it's really, really important. I think, and I don't think a lot of people do this. I know I certainly didn't very, very early on. Is stop for 5 seconds, 15 seconds before you pick up a phone call, before you actually start having a meeting, before you start having a all-in discussion about a sales copy for a long-form sales page or a website you're designing. What is the primary focus and outcome you're trying to get from this thing? Because there's always going to be a primary focus and there's always going to be a secondary focus. And if you don't set that context up front, even in your own mind or in a discussion perspective, you will try and get too much out of what you're trying to do. Like your website will get confused. Is it a lead generation site? Is it an e-commerce site? What's the whole purpose of this page? What's the purpose of this action I'm about to do? I'm going to sit down and do 45 minutes of critical focus time, something we've spoken about in a previous episode. I'm going to sit down for 45 minutes focused on one thing. What is that primary focus going to be? Because if you sit down at your desk and go, I'm going to work on my business for an hour, what the hell does that mean? What does working on your business mean for an hour? Does it mean I'm going to be doing the books? I'm going to get distracted by an email? I'm going to take a phone call? That's not productive. My primary focus for this 45 minutes is to write an email newsletter I'm going to send out as a check move. And that's going to be my offer for today. I'm going to sit down for the next hour and do this. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to do some training for the Ironman. My whole focus this hour is making sure that my 4 5-minute intensive intervals are hard, or whatever it might be. This is the core focus I'm working on. My swim set this morning, my core focus was the pool part of the swim session in the pool. That's the PULL. It's part of a stroke. What is your primary focus? And it's so important. And I ask this question in the office so many times, and I'll stop a meeting and I'll say, hang on, what was the primary focus of this conversation? What was the primary focus of this discussion going to be? What was the primary focus of what we're trying to actually discuss here? Don't get off topic. So many conversations get off topic and you forget what the primary focus is. So I think it's really, really important and a very powerful question to ask yourself extremely regularly. What's the primary focus of
X? I completely agree. I find this, I mean, the individual object, like this page, this phone call, whatever, that's got power in itself. But to me, the one that has the most effect is that 5 minutes of thinking, or however long it is, of thinking and planning and just making a note or whatever, before you actually engage into a lot of time slot, as you say, the CFT, the critical focus time. What is that phrase? Basically, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there.
Yep.
Before it's more important to spend 5 minutes working out what you're going to do for the next 50 than it is to allocate the 50. Because if you allocate 50 minutes and do nothing, or do nothing that's focused, or do stuff that you don't need to do, or that's not going to have impact on your business, etc., then you may as well not have used that 50 minutes that way. You may as well just have carried on wherever you were going before. So that is really powerful. Before you do anything, or while you're doing it, always review what is the primary focus.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. And then we've come to the final question. And the final question is something I think you should be asking yourself when you do your review stage. So maybe you've designed a web page, you've designed a direct mail campaign, you've done something, and the question is, did I ask too much of it? Did I ask too much of it? And one of the things when you sort of really assess something, why didn't something work, or why didn't it work as well as I thought, or whatever it might be, one of the core things that I continually find when I discuss things with people and delve in and give mentoring or coaching is that they've asked too much of it. They've just asked too much of it. And what that means is you've sent out a direct mail campaign asking for people to go to your website, fill out a form, phone your business, make a decision about 3 different things. Have you asked too many questions? Have you made too many offers in one communication? Have you asked too much of that person? Have you asked too much of that staff member? Have you asked too much of the web page? Have you asked too much of it? And it's just sort of a great way to sort of reassess and go, hang on, my expectations were too much of this thing, this task, this person. And it just helps reassess and just make sure you're on track when you're actually coming back to the start of that particular planning session and having a core primary focus, because maybe you've actually had too many focuses or not a clear clarity on your focus, and then you've asked too much of it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, those two questions are absolutely, or can be, really related. If you take the example of a web page with some kind of form on it, if you look at if you do, you're obviously measuring the response, measuring your traffic and your conversions on that page, as we have been trying to get people to do forever. If the page isn't gathering as many leads or as many responders as you would hope for, and you want to know why, then the first thing to do is say, well, what was the primary focus of that page, that form, whatever, and then measure and say, did I ask too much? One of the most classic things that I saw one the other day from a potential client. They have a form. They want sign-ups. They said, we want sign-ups. Now, that's a little bit vague. So I had to go back and ask them a question, because they had a form on the very first page of their landing page. It's a 3-stage sign-up process, and the first page has a form on it with, I think it's 11 fields.
Ouch.
Yeah, one of them's phone number, and it's required. And at that point, I said, what is the primary focus of this? And are you asking too much? Because if really what they want is for people to be starting to be within their circle of influence, starting to just be somebody that they can communicate with, they really only need an email address. I'm sure they'd like all that other information, but do they need it? Are they asking too much? And is that why they're failing to get these sign-ups? And that's just one example of where those two questions are connected, in my mind, certainly. But
absolutely,
yeah, that's a great set of questions there. Let's just run through those again. We'll summarise them in the notes, obviously, but after some feedback on the 7 levers episode was people said, we were scrabbling to write those down.
Fair enough. We're hopefully going to have a little app done at some point, as we spoke about previously. We're going to try and work with someone who's a listener in getting something like that put together. So we'll keep you in touch on that one. But for today's podcast, today's episode, the 9 questions for you all in no particular order. Question 1: how many offers did you make today? Check move theory. How many offers did you make today? Question 2: when was the last time you did something for the first time? Get out there and challenge yourself and do something new. Do something for the first time. Number 3, what mechanical work did you do today? What stuff are you doing in your business that is just mechanics? It's not actually creative. It's not actually using any brain power. It's just doing mechanical work. And how can you actually get that off your plate? Question 4, what did you do today you didn't need to do? Was that because you were scared, you were trying to procrastinate, or you were just doing stuff that you could really delegate? What did you do today that you didn't need to? Question 5, what didn't you do today that you should have done? Because you were scared, because you forgot about it, because you were not on target, whatever it might be. What didn't you do today that you should have done? Question 6, did you drink 2 litres of water and have 2 pieces of fruit? Got to look after yourself. You got to fuel the machine that is you. You're going to get more done if you fuel yourself better and look after yourself. Question 7, how can you profit from your waste? Whether that be a hairdresser selling the offcuts to a doll factory, or whether you actually are maximising the space on your invoice with an upsell or cross-sell, how can you profit and get more from what you're already doing or the wastage in your business? Question 8, what's the primary focus of blank? Whether you're doing a web page design, a sales letter, a meeting, or a phone call, what is your primary focus? Be clear with that before you start, and then everyone in that conversation can have the same objective and the same outcome and the same context. It comes back to the whole context episode we spoke about previously. And the 9th question is, did I ask too much of it? So in the review stage, you should be continually reviewing everything you do. An email you've sent, a conversation you've had, whatever it might be, did you ask too much of it? And that, my friends, are the 9 questions you should be asking yourself on a regular basis.
And I have kind of an implied 10th question.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that is, did you ask yourself these questions today?
Ooh, I like it. That is good.
Because that comes to me from something that I've been thinking about before the call today, actually. It was a concept I heard of first through Eben Pagan, a concept called sharpening the saw.
Yes.
Where most people, and you mentioned this throughout the episode today, most people are busy working. They're in their work. They're in their business. They're not working on their business. They're not improving their business knowledge. They're not observing their business performance, all those things. And so these questions are a good set of questions. They're your questions. You've come up with them, and it's a great place to start. And they are pretty generic and relevant to everybody and every business. But probably the most important meta question is, did you stand back today? Did you review your day? Did you ask yourself these questions?
Nice. So on that note, I think we've got a little... Let's put a bow on it and wrap this episode up. And I'm going to actually leave everyone with one final question as well, just to add an extra one in here. And my question is, have you left us a review on iTunes yet? It's important. We want your support, we want your help, and we want your feedback. And obviously you can tweet us, you can email us, but we would really love your support on iTunes. So if you've got some time, and if something you've done has made you a bit of money from what you've learned here, or it's saved you a little bit of time, or given you a bit more confidence, I'd love you to reinvest in us. And reinvest by spending a couple of seconds over on iTunes, giving us a review, a star rating, because it helps us, and that'll mean we'll continue to help invest our time in you and your business as well through the podcast. So thank you all to the thousands of listeners we've got regularly, but we would obviously love more feedback and obviously more listeners. So tell your friends too.
Absolutely. I really do. We do appreciate the feedback. And we appreciate the input into the show, both from the format, the topics that we choose, and any topics that you want to hear. At the moment, you'll hear us saying, Pete, what's on your mind? Don, what's on your mind? What's happened this week? But if there's something that you want us to focus on, something that we're not talking about, something that we've said we're going to talk about but we haven't yet, and you really are interested in that topic, the comments or an email or a tweet, those are great places to get in touch with us. But yeah, the big thing for us at the moment is the iTunes Store is a great way to show us that you appreciate what we do, because by giving us a comment, you're telling iTunes you like us. By telling iTunes you like us, it promotes our podcast, which means more people will see it. Whenever we make it into the new and notables or the charts, and we have done that a couple of times recently, we see more subscribers, and that's getting the message out there, which is what we're trying to do.
Awesome, guys. Go forth, ask yourself these questions, and we'll see you same time, same place next week for another PreneurCast episode.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@preneurgroup.com.